Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Dustin Robinson, and I am the host for Investor Hotseat, where we ask the tough questions that CEOs need to be prepared to answer. Since this is a show about investing, we always have our quick disclaimer. This show is not a solicitation for investment, and we certainly encourage you to check out our full terms and conditions on our website. We just popped it up real quick on this screen so you guys could take a peek. But if you want to give it a better read, it is on our Psychedelic Invest homepage. The agenda for each episode is we start off with a 5-minute presentation from a CEO. That's followed by 30 minutes Q&A with myself, and then we will reserve 5 to 10 minutes at the end for any questions from the audience. So if you have any questions whatsoever, just drop them in the chat box, and we'll be sure to get to them at the end. Very excited for our show today. We got a great CEO, Tom Feegel he's the CEO of Beond. What we're going to do is we're going to be welcoming on the show in just a second. I'm going to bring him in, and we're going to put him on. He's going to have 5 minutes to present. Tom, you got 5 minutes, and you're on the clock.
Hey, Dustin, thank you so much for inviting me I think the slides are out of order. For inviting us, it's great to be here. It's great to have a chance to share Beond, spend time chatting with you, and hopefully answer some questions from your audience. My name is Tom Feegel. I am the CEO of Beond. I can't advance these slides on my own, but you can go to the next one. I'll tell you why we exist. Beond is most well known right now as a residential treatment facility or facilities in Mexico that is primarily treating chemical dependency. The reason we exist is because it's a huge problem and there doesn't seem to be a solution available that works, that's accessible, and that is reliable. 100,000 people in 2021, pegged at 2022 at 100,008 overdose deaths for the first time. This is hugely expensive, and a solution to this problem would not only help a lot of people, but would be a huge relief to many different communities, governments, and support systems that exist. It's a $2.5 trillion problem. Next slide. Like I said, these are people. Every single day, about 273 brothers, sisters, mothers, their children overdose die of an overdose in the United States alone. That's one every 5 minutes or so. Next slide. And they're desperate. We talk to them all day, every day. We meet them here. We talk to their families. Communities are desperate. Incarceration didn't work. Harm reduction does work, but it doesn't really solve the addiction epidemic problem. Conventional rehabilitation doesn't seem to have a consistent pattern of success. 2.5 million people will go to a conventional drug and alcohol rehabilitation facility this year in the United States, and their success rate at interrupting and sustaining recovery is a debated single-digit percentage of those people who go. So 2.5 million people go, they spend about $23 billion to do it, and somewhere north of 90% of them don't find success. I think we can do better. Beond thinks we can do better, and that's why we exist. Next. What we do at Beond is we combine conventional modern medical expertise, technology in the form of telemedicine, advanced medical technology here in our facilities, with the psychedelic plant medicine to end addiction, both on the individual level and we hope en masse. Next slide. We built purpose-designed facilities that are luxurious, they're comfortable, they're holistic. We offer a range of adjunct therapies, nutrition, psychotherapy, daily psychotherapy, as well as Ibogaine assisted treatment. Next slide. We're treating people. I don't know if it's easy to see these testimonials. There's videos on our website, on YouTube, of people who have gone to 80 rehabs, one gentleman, dozens of rehabs. It's a recurring experience where they desperately seek treatment. They use the conventional methodologies. They use the conventional interventions, and eventually there is some recurring physiological effect that causes them to relapse. Ibogaine in particular, when combined with therapy, is very effective at ameliorating or eliminating that pattern. Next. Many more testimonials from people that have come to Beond, that have gone elsewhere and say, thank you, it worked. Their families say, thank you for giving my mother back, my father back, my child back. And most importantly, the clients go on to live a highly productive, motivated, purposeful life. Next. We intend to be the best Ibogaine assisted treatment platform in the world. We call it a platform because it's not just a residence. It's not just a treatment room. It's preparation using telemedicine. It's pre-treatment using psychotherapy. It's continuous daily psychotherapy. It's medically advanced administration of Ibogaine. And then it's aftercare as well. That's why we call it a platform. Next slide. We are expanding and growing, and that's why we're talking to partners who are working well with us to help us not only raise money, but get our word out, champion our success, and underscore what Beond is doing differently from the entire Ibogaine community at large and historically. Quickly, next slide. I'm one of the two founders. My co-founder is Talia Eisenberg. I've been a conventional, traditional business strategy consultant focused on growth strategy and innovation. I've run large companies. I've built venture-backed startups. My co-founder, Talia Eisenberg, is an MBA. She's also started psychedelic wellness businesses, and our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Jeffrey Camlett, is the world's foremost authority on safety in Ibogaine and is a board-certified addiction medicine specialist.
Awesome. Tom, I'm going to cut you off because I think our 5 minutes is up, but you did a great job, and I'm sure we're going to jump into it and cover all the stuff that maybe you didn't get to. So appreciate the presentation. And yeah, thank you so much for the work you're doing in addiction. It's obviously there's such a high unmet need. So thank you and your team for doing the work you guys are doing.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invite. It's good to see you. You look fantastic.
Thank you. You as well. Trying. I got a sweatshirt on. Usually I wear a button down, but I'm relaxed today. So yeah, let's jump into it. I'm going to start with the same question I ask everyone. It's the softball before we heat up the seat. So one of the questions I always want to know from the founders is the why you got started, what inspired you really, number one, to get into the industry, but also why you decided to start Beond and focus on Ibogaine addiction treatment.
Thank you. Well, it's a deeply personal one for me. I've been in recovery, free of all drugs and alcohol for almost 17 years now. Frankly, my success as a business strategy consultant working with some very big firms, my whole career, I've either been on the operating side or the advisory side, identifying growth opportunities, disruptive innovation opportunities for partners, VCs, existing companies, looking at where are they going to grow next. And those two very personal experiences come together through Beond. Conventional treatment for addiction, God bless the therapists and the doctors that are doing the best they can with the tools that they have and have been trained to use for the most part. But their success rates, I believe, are unacceptable. And so when I met someone who had been who became an opiate addict through a prescription medication, and then ended up becoming an IV heroin user, we talked sobriety, we talked therapy, we talked about recovery, their path was very different from mine. Mine was, intervention, 12-step, it worked in the same way, spiritual awakening, sense of purpose, sense of service, sense of commitment, all of which gave me my career as a founder of other companies. Their story was, I struggled, I went to rehab, 6, 7, 8 rehabs, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, and none of it worked. I found out about a place in Mexico, went there, did Ibogaine. It worked in 12 hours, but the place was terrible. No doctors, no psychology, no preparation, no nutrition, no aftercare. And I made a commitment to the people in my family that struggled with addiction, the people that I know in recovery, and my children, really, that we would build a place where if anyone needed Ibogaine, they should go to this type of place. And that's what we built. That's why I'm here.
That's fantastic. No,
it's also a great disruptive innovation, of course. I mean, look, a $23 billion business industry with somewhere around a 9% or less success rate, to me, just screams for a better solution.
Absolutely. No, it's such a powerful story you have. And, obviously you talked a lot in your presentation. We've already touched on this high unmet need. The current standard of care just really isn't cutting it. When you think that, about 90% of the people that go into it are relapsing, it's certainly, not good statistics, but there are other psychedelic compounds, and our fund is very passionate on this addiction space. And we've made several investments into various psychedelic compounds for addiction. But you guys are specifically working with Ibogaine. So I'd like you to kind of explain why you believe, how you believe Ibogaine will compare to these other psychedelic compounds when treating addiction.
Sure. So, I mean, there's a few different ways to answer that. Let's first talk just about Ibogaine and not compare it to anything. So Ibogaine discovered, first of all, it's been used for, a very long time ceremonially in Gabon, in the Briti tribe, as a rite of initiation and passage and key transitions in life. The thumbnail sketch of why is because the community really wants to help people prepare for that next part of life. So it really is about change, but even in a spiritual and ceremonial sense. So whether you're getting married, entering adulthood, and so on, that's used in that way. That's Iboga, the plant, the natural substance that comes from the same plant, the same root bark. What we use is Ibogaine. It's a hydrochloride. It's purified. It's tested for purity, and it allows very precise dosage for the interruption of addiction. So Ibogaine does 4 or 5 things. Number one, it specifically is known to interrupt and eliminate post-acute withdrawal symptoms from opioids and other substances. So first of all, one of the reasons that conventional treatment doesn't work is because somebody's suffering. They can't really, they have to be medically treated while they're going to the therapy. So then you have solutions like Suboxone, methadone, we've all heard of them, but it really doesn't eliminate the addiction. It just reduces the withdrawals. Ibogaine eliminates the withdrawals in about 12 hours. Number two, it's not an addictive substance itself. So there's no cases of anyone using Ibogaine and becoming habituated to reuse of it. It's safe in a clinical setting when used in a specific set of protocols, specific types of screening and understanding of cardiovascular risks and others. It is safe, and it actually breaks that addiction because the client or the recipient is able to quickly enter therapy and focus on the same sort of talk therapy, support, self-care. But when you look at how Ibogaine affects the serotonin system, serotonin 2A, the kappa opioid receptor, and its production of GDNF and the restoration of dopamine neuron sites, it's like a super powerful drug for addiction and have habitual interruption. So the addiction that we focus on can be chemical dependency, but you know as well as I do, people are addicted to many other things than just drugs. So we treat them as well. So when you compare it to LSD or psilocybin, which have been used, or even ketamine in some cases, have been used to, quote, treat addiction and been successful, the one thing none of them do is the palliative effect of eliminating withdrawals. So what the comparison is, of course, there's some introspection, there's some insight that comes from those substances, but there's no evidence, there's no reports that any of those substances reduce or eliminate the cravings or withdrawal symptoms from opioids, cocaine, or alcohol, or other stimulants like crystal meth, Adderall, etc. So we eliminate all the sense of craving so that we can intervene with psychotherapy.
Absolutely. And I know that when I first got into the psychedelic space, the first compound I heard about with respect to addiction was Ibogaine. So, it seems like there is some evidence that's coming out of some of these other psychedelic compounds, but really historically, when you talk about what compounds are best for what indications, what I've always repeatedly heard is that Ibogaine is best for addiction. So I think it really resonates with what I've been hearing out in the market as well.
Yeah, one key point that I touched on, but I want to underscore here is we treat here, I'm at Beond, by the way, here in Cancun. It's a beautiful day. Not much better than Miami, where you are probably, but we're happy to be here. Chemical dependency, severe depression, severe anxiety, PTSD, the GDNF production that results from Ibogaine, the repairing of those damaged dopamine neurons is known to treat traumatic brain injury and PTSD. Those are very severe cases where most of the people who come have tried something conventional and got unsatisfactory results. So by the time they get here, they're really motivated. They've really been suffering. But there's a whole other group of people that seem to be coming now, which are, they haven't raised their hand and said, I'm an addict, but their relationship with something, food, media, internet content, person, X or whatever.
Gambling?
Sorry?
Gambling?
Gambling needs to be reset. So they know it's not working, but they haven't hit so-called rock bottom yet. And we're seeing more and more and more of those types of visitors as well, which is very exciting because we would like to see them get treatment long before things become a catastrophe.
Absolutely. And you mentioned earlier about how there are other places that are delivering Ibogaine, but you just weren't impressed with the facilities and the support they were providing. And anyone who's familiar with the psychedelic space is well aware that set and setting is so important. The preparation, the integration, really the whole experience beyond just the administration of the medicine is very important. So could you walk us through just the patient journey all the way from signing up with you guys, the preparation, the administration, all the way through to the aftercare support that you guys provide?
Absolutely. And you mentioned the other places. Ibogaine is, there used to be sort of an Ibogaine community. And normally what would happen is, as you would expect, someone who has this seemingly miraculous interruption of a dependency or the suffering, which was going on for a long time, they want to share it. So that oftentimes they became a provider without really understanding everything else that would be needed to truly help people. There's a lot of those types of so-called providers, facilities out there, single practitioners, et cetera. Then on the other side of the spectrum, there are some places that have some medical infrastructure, but largely focused on either of two dimensions. Either they're sort of a rapid detox, or they're a luxuriously, resort environment. But they don't focus on the addiction medicine underpinning that we do, the therapy, the understanding of how addiction works and how TBI and PTSD works to cause that suffering. So what we do is, number one, we have 5 phases. We call it insight-oriented Ibogaine for a reason. You would imagine we're looking for insights. So we start in the very beginning in what we call preparation. This is done remotely via telemedicine platforms with a therapeutic coach or a therapist with the client after they've been medically qualified to come. So they've filled in an application, they've committed to coming, they've been reviewed by our licensed, credentialed MDs for any contraindications have been eliminated. Okay, then they are approved. They start telemedicine remotely, and that phase has a goal. That goal is to understand the whole person, and the reason for that is we need the raw material when they get here on site for our therapists to go deep very quickly before the Ibogaine treatment. They go deep, setting what we call the personal psychedelic agenda. Colloquially, we say it's my mind, my journey. But what we're really trying to help that person do is use the Ibogaine experience to identify what are those life experiences at the root of their addiction. The third phase is treatment itself. And for us, treatment is a 12-hour experience that happens in what looks like kind of a sexy ICU. It has all of the same equipment you'd find in Miami or anywhere else, but it looks like a place that you would feel safe, welcome, warm, hospitable. But the number one goal of that third phase is safety, not just medical safety. Of course, everyone would expect that, but we want psychological safety. Do you understand my mind? Do I believe you understand where I am in my psychology? To emotional, do you know how I'm feeling? Can you empathize? Can you demonstrate that you are understanding my anxiety, my ambition, my fear, etc.? And then fourth, spiritual safety. Like, this is a very deep experience. And there's been a lot of situations where somebody said, like, I want the medicine, but I don't want all that, sort of spiritual influence that's going on. Maybe they need it, but they don't feel comfortable with it. So we ensure all 4 of those types of safety by saying we've had Orthodox Jews come here, we've had born again Christians come here, and we meet them where they are. We honor their spirit and we keep them safe. The last 2 phases are acute aftercare, because once you come out of Ibogaine, you need to commence your longer term recovery, whatever the situation is, not just for chemical dependency. We need to change behaviors. And so we engage deeply in acute aftercare here on site for some portion of your time here, so 10, 14 days, about half that would be that aftercare. And then long-term aftercare, which is also remote. So you're in touch with the person that you met before you came, after you go home, and that therapeutic engagement continues, because no one can really predict what's going to happen when they get back home. Some life stressor is going to happen, and we want to be there for them to continue the development, the benefits that they derived here.
Absolutely. Yeah, the aftercare portion is just so important, both the preparation and the integration. I want to jump into an area that's a bit proprietary, so you'll answer, to the extent that you're open to answering. But I want to talk about your protocols. I've had the benefit of signing an NDA and going through your protocols, and they're extremely robust, hundreds of pages of protocols. So I'd like to talk a little bit about those protocols with whatever information you could share. If you could just talk to us about how you actually just developed those protocols, and, are the protocols different depending on the person or depending on the indication, or are they more rigid? Is there variability in them? Whatever information you could share regarding those protocols.
Sure. So when we think about protocols, of course, the first and foremost priority is safety. So there's very strict practices, algorithms to identify any potential risk of a contraindication. That's first and foremost, because we don't want to lead someone to believe that they should do Ibogaine if they shouldn't. It won't be safe. or actually provide Ibogaine if it wouldn't be safe. On the other hand, we do sometimes invite people who have been rejected from other facilities because the protocols, the safety protocols are so robust. We look at whole health history. We do our own labs here. We do our own testing for all kinds of liver enzymes, cardiovascular risk. We have the same tools that they have in Miami, as I mentioned. So we normally, before the protocol calls for gathering that information before they're qualified and then duplicating that information once they arrive. That's safety. There's some psychological protocols as well, important to safety, to really understand the mindset and the condition that someone comes to us in. Then the protocols become a bit varied around what are the symptoms that are being presented. So of course, the way that we calculate dosage, the way that we identify the timing of the dosage, the pre-treatment period, the type of psychotherapy, the type of engagement, the specialization, whether it's trauma, suicidality, chemical dependency, depression, anxiety, a behavioral addiction like gambling or sex or pornography, etc. That takes a different type of protocol, but the safety is the same. And so each of them that we've developed, some of them are really dialed in for a specific chemical dependency, like opioids versus cocaine or alcohol. There's a length of time that shifts sometimes for the detox period, et cetera. But also there's polysubstance use. So this shifts the protocol again. So when you have, many people combine chemical dependencies. They might use crystal meth and fentanyl and sometimes alcohol and an SSRI, et cetera. And so God bless them, we have to have a way to understand what they truly need, because our number one goal is efficacy and long-term recovery. And then there's a third set of protocols around family, because we know that no one who's suffering from these experiences, this journey, is alone. And their behavior, their history has an impact on the people around them, their spouses, their parents, their brothers, their sisters, and so on. And so we've developed protocols. While we don't introduce Ibogaine to those people all the time, we do have protocols to engage them so they're able to really understand what their family members gone through and how to support them without just saying like, you should go to meetings or, you should go to therapy. They really understand what the person's insights were. So we call it insight-oriented Ibogaine because we're looking at every phase for what dots are going to be connected to put together the plan, the aftercare plan of action that they take home, but that includes the family as well. So the protocols were developed by first our lead physicians, our experienced therapists, contributed to by our ICU trained nurses, our emergency medicine technicians who are here, all to make sure it's safe and effective. And then what we did is we went out and we asked Ibogaine experts who are experienced to road test them, to interrogate them, who do not work here, just in the interest of the common welfare. Help us determine what did we leave out, if anything. How can we make this better? So we recruited external PhD level psychologists, Joseph Barsulia, Lynette Averill, and others with specific Ibogaine experience, but they don't practice here, and said, here's what we're going to do. These are our protocols. Can you help us make them better? And we think that should be a minimum requirement for someone that claims to have a protocol.
Yeah, and reading through your protocols in your data room, you could tell that these were not, Beond is a relatively young company, and you guys have seen patients, but you could tell these protocols were based off of years and years of experience. So could you maybe give us a little bit of background on your team? And number one, actually, kind of the amount of treatments that Beond has been able to do as a company, but then also the people on your team, What is their background? How many Ibogaine experiences have they actually administered under their guidance?
Two great questions. Thank you. I mean, look, we started, we were doing some private, so-called private treatments in March. Super high level, high net worth individuals, celebrities, people who really didn't want to go anywhere where they would see anyone or anyone might see them for various reasons, safety, privacy, etc. We respect that. We really formally started in April, and since April, I think we're now approaching our 50th treatment. And we're not in a race. We want to get it right. We want to keep people safe. We want to learn a lot and collect a lot of data so that as we scale, we can put that to work. The protocols were developed by the team. So we have Dr. Jeffrey Camlett, MD, who is based in the United States. He is a board certified addiction medicine specialist. He has been practicing for 30 years, and for 26 of them, he's been doing private Ibogaine treatments in Mexico, where Ibogaine is unregulated. It's a Schedule I substance, like cannabis. Thanks for all your hard work to help expand access to the medicines that we know work better than some of the pharmaceuticals. He's been doing it in Mexico with clients because he knows how to do it, and it is unregulated in Mexico. He said one thing to me when I went and tried to communicate what we're going to do with Beond, how it was going to scale, and why it would really make an impact and make a lot of money for our investor partners, and be a great calling, a great vocation for the people who are really trying to help. He said, you got to get this other guy, and he said, Dr. Felipe Malacara, MD, is the most experienced other person that I know of, Dr. Camlett said. And he's the number 2 at a facility that's been around for about 20 years. That really doesn't have the holistic care, the psychotherapy that is known as a credible detox using Ibogaine in a medically safe way. I met Dr. Malacara, spent a lot of time in Mexico with him, with his beautiful family. And he said, I would finally get to do it the right way. And those 2 team members joining really changed everything. We then had to go make sure that we had the best legal advisory support. And we partnered with a firm based in LA and found a gentleman by the name of John Libby, former US district attorney, knew the DOJ, knew the DEA extremely well. And I said, we won't actually open unless you tell us how to do it legally. What would you have done, John, as a prosecutor? And it took him months and months and months to get all of the plan right. That you can do it this way, don't do it that way. And that's exactly what we follow. Then we built the team below them: nurses, psychotherapists, chefs, adjunct therapists, all of whom comprise the team that our hospitality team that really care for our guests when they come.
Got it.
Question satisfactorily? Okay.
Absolutely. And so I want to get into some of the more financial aspects of it. So I want to talk about capacity. So, you guys have one facility in Mexico. I'd like to understand, how many patients would you be able to see on a weekly or monthly basis? How many rooms do you have? How many patients can you see? And how soon do you think you'll be hitting capacity within that space?
We're full. We've been full. One of the reasons why we haven't talked recently, Dustin, is we're full. We're at capacity. We've really tried to do a few things differently in this phase. Number one, nail it. We use a phrase here: nail it, then scale it. And so we're really focused on getting it right, really understanding what it's like to come here, really empathizing with the entire journey from the moment you commit, how do you get here, and what's it like when you get home, and how do you feel? Every aspect of it. So, We currently have 7 functional rooms here with 1 treatment room in addition. We could expand. We could make every room a treatment room, and we could increase our capacity with this facility from 8 patients a week to 10-day period per month to maybe 1.5 times that here. But again, we're not trying to compress the time. We're trying to learn as much as we can with these paying customer clients, guests. The average price is about $10,000, which is about a third or 20% of what they would pay in a conventional rehab. It's about a third of the time that they would spend in a conventional rehab. And they find it to be much more effective. Many of them, there's a video on our website, Michael, who went to 80 rehabs before he came here. And this is the only place that was successful for him. He's been out of here 90 days and he's doing fantastic. I talked to his parents recently. His dad said to me, I've got a friend for you. I got a friend who should come there. And by the way, Michael is different. And I was like, yeah, he's your son. You got your son back. So we could do many more treatments here, but I think what we're planning on doing is continuing this operating model through the end of this year. We've already found a facility that's twice this size, a former hotel, that would work beautifully. We don't buy the facilities. We long-term lease them so that we have optionality. We would rather go bigger with smaller footprint, so a larger facility allows us to have fewer trained medical practitioners in one facility rather than spreading them out all over. This is not a retreat center. We have elements of retreat. It's beautiful gardens, aquatics, nutrition, etc., ceremonies, sound healings, cacao ceremonies, qigong, etc. It's not a clinical feeling environment. However, we'd rather go bigger in fewer locations than spread them all over the place. So we would like to have larger facilities. Our strategic goal is eliminate the airplane. So the closer we can get to the United States, the better. We have a vision for doing preparation in a place like Texas or Arizona and really driving someone into a part of Mexico with a branded experience that is exactly continuous. Go into your room in a Beond facility in Mexico, have your Ibogaine treatment, your acute aftercare over 2, 3, 4 days, then go back to the United States for your aftercare, which will allow us, I should say, to have insurance reimbursements for two important parts of the care continuum and the delivery model. We can't do insurance reimbursements in Mexico. A lot of people think it's worth it. We do offer payment terms for qualified guests who need them. We're fundamentally committed to fair pricing. So we've purposefully reduced our price for care below the average market, but we've capped the capacity. So we only offer a certain number of treatments per month at that price. And as the month goes on, the price goes up. So if you're qualified and you really need to come tomorrow, Dustin, you can, but it'll cost you more. And the market has responded very favorably to that. Some people are booking in November and December now because they want to pay a little bit less and they can wait. Some people need to go on tour for their platinum level band, and they're like, I got to come tomorrow. Talk to my personal doctor about making sure I'm qualified, and they come right now. It's the same level of care, but it's a little more expensive. So I think we believe, we've always envisioned that we'll need more doctors. We've set up a residency program to invite largely US-based doctors who are trained in addiction medicine and emergency medicine care to come here and do rotations, 3-month rotations, go back to work in the US, come back, and they get a certificate from our doctors saying, you could do an Ibogaine treatment, you know how to do it our way. And we believe that those people in that experience have a big shift of, I'd like to do it your way with you rather than somewhere else. So we're building our infrastructure, but we're building our talent pool too.
That's great. And I want to get into some of the scaling and strategy on growth. But first, I want to nail down these numbers at your current facility. So I think I heard you say, about 8 patients you can see per week. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, so the treatment period is shortest is 7 days, longest is about 10 days.
So would it be fair to say you can maybe see like 30 patients per month without compromising, the treatment, of course, you don't want to tell you. So you're saying
in this facility without expanding at all. That's correct.
So 30 patients a month at potentially 10K a piece. You're talking about potentially right within this facility, 300K of revenue per month, potentially, if you're operating at really full capacity.
I think your math is correct. Yes.
Okay, good. I spend a lot of time on math, so I'm trying.
I know you do.
And so okay, so that's good to know. And so your strategy, it sounds like you want to expand into other spaces. And obviously, it sounds like you've really spent a lot of time building your team at this one specific location, right? And it sounds like you have a world-renowned team. Obviously, they can't be everywhere all the time, right? So you gotta train people at these other facilities. So what is your strategy to ensure that the same quality that you have at this facility is going to be at some of the other facilities that you expand into?
We have the same secret as everyone else. Training. You have to spend time here. You have to understand all the protocols. We just published on our website a clinical study that is a summary of everything you need to know about Ibogaine if you're considering doing it, or considering it for your own client if you're a therapist. Written by Thomas Kingsley Brown, who ran the largest observational study. He's an advisor to us. Loves what we're doing, even though he's been doing it for a very long time. Thinks this is the right way to do it. So our lead doctors essentially internally need to certify you as qualified to assist in a treatment, and then eventually you could perform a treatment. Now, we use a lot of technology. So in our treatment rooms, right, the Ibogaine does have an impact on your cardiovascular system. It has a QT prolongation. So it essentially elongates the period until your heart beats again. Sometimes there's some hypotension. Now, normally these things are not a significant adverse event if you know how to identify them and you know what to do about them. They happen all the time in other scenarios. The fact that Ibogaine is causing it doesn't make it significantly worse, doesn't eliminate it. So what we really need to do is train our medical professionals, our doctors, to be able to see that and know what to do about it. They already probably, based on their conventional training, know what to do about it before they come down here. But they've never done it in this context, right? They've done it on many other patients in hospitals around the US. We use technology to monitor that. They can watch treatments remotely in the US from here. They can see what's going on. They're not doing anything about it, but they can study the care. Of course, we keep a lot of data. So every treatment goes into a black box. You can rewatch the EKGs. You can examine exactly what happened minute by minute over a 12-hour Ibogaine treatment. No one's doing that. So they can train based on our past treatments and prepare, not by guessing, but really analyzing what happened, why it was safe, was there an incident of anxiety, what was the intervention, what was the aftercare. We use a very robust electronic record system, health management system that is used by several hundred facilities in the United States. So every interaction from a care perspective by a nurse, a therapist, or a doctor here is tracked. All of those records will be part of their source material to prepare for that first treatment. And that leads us to believe that they could be dispatched, of course, with supervision. of course, with qualification prior to even coming here and training, dispatched with supervision by our medical leadership who have done thousands of treatments. You know, if you ever I grew up with a doctor as a parent, you know, to their patient, it's an extremely rare occurrence to have surgery. But to the doctor doing it, usually they're kind of like, yeah, I got surgery, I got to go. It's not, to them, they take it extremely seriously. But since they, you know, Dr. Kimlett's done it, you know, 2,500 times or so, Dr. Malakara, more than that, you sort of know what you're doing by that time, you know, over 10,000 hours of treatments. Remember, 2,500 times 12 hours is a very big number, even for you, to calculate. So they know what they're looking for and they know how to talk about it. We train people on site. We give them the data. We give them the protocol. We test them against it before they walk anywhere near a treatment room.
Got it. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the potential future threats. So to the business potential, I want to understand your perspective on it. So, you know, right now Ibogaine is not legally allowed down here. Really, there's no psychedelic compounds that are legally allowed other than ketamine, if you consider it a psychedelic compound. So there's this really unique opportunity where Ibogaine is showing so much efficacy for treating addiction, and really the current standard of care just isn't there. However, there are several biotech companies developing Ibogaine drugs right now, and I'd like to understand, in the event that those drugs are potentially approved sometime in the future. We know drug development does take long, but you know, if we're an investor, we want to invest in the long term. I want to understand, how do you see this world looking? Do you see a world where potentially there is a Ibogaine FDA approved drug, but there's also these Ibogaine clinics that you're running outside of the country that provide kind of a different experience, or how do you see the world looking in that environment?
Big question. Short answer. We want to help people now. We think nature got it right. We know it works based on the studies, based on the science that's been conducted, and based on the reports from the people who come and who went elsewhere. We think of what we're doing as innovative on many different levels. And so, you know, Ibogaine, in the way that we use it, is innovative. But if there was a technical innovation around Ibogaine that proved and was demonstrably reliable to be better than nature, of course we would consider using it. If that meant, okay, well, we had to partner with another company that had created something better than nature, you know, they haven't done it anywhere else, but let's imagine they did it. Of course we would, for the benefit of our clients and the benefit of the world.
In that instance, would you imagine that maybe you would open up clinics in the United States to actually deliver that?
Well, but hang on a second. So we're just talking about the technology there. So now you're saying the technology exists and it's been approved and it's being used in the United States? Yeah, I would argue that at that time, should it occur, which there doesn't seem to be any indication that it's going to happen in the US before it happens in Canada, and it doesn't seem to be happening in Canada either, with a new technology, I would say we will know more than anyone else about how to use Ibogaine or an Ibogaine variant in the context of the condition in which it is being used to treat chemical dependency, depression, anxiety, trauma. Parkinson's is an area of research. We would love to participate in that. You know, again, there are some contraindications for many people that have Parkinson's, oftentimes sort of DQ out of an Ibogaine treatment, but it's being done elsewhere. So we would use an alternative to the certifiably pure, naturally derived Ibogaine that we currently use if it was proven to be equally effective and accessible, of course. Now, in the United States, the work that you're doing and other people are doing, I think that because of our track record, we will eventually be invited to participate in conversations, not at the federal level, unfortunately, but at the state level for sure, to say, hey, we can't lock them all up. They're dying by the hundreds per day. They're wrecking families, communities, and they want to stop. Help us. What can you help us? So we would love a special dispensation, say, from the governor of Texas, hypothetically, to allow us to do a small number of treatments our way with our safety protocols, with our doctors in their facilities at a VA or a state-operated hospital to prove that it works, and then scale it using these protocols. That's not our job today. Unfortunately, we'd love to do it, and we hope we get the opportunity to.
Well, it might be in Florida. I just got off a call where we were talking about what kind of bill we want to file here in Florida to try to change some of the laws around psychedelics. So,
First of all, thank you for doing that, Dustin, and you do a lot of that. I saw your testimony on LinkedIn. It was really incredible to watch. You're a great orator, a great person, a great mind, well articulated. And that's what we need, right? We need investors who care, that put people first, not profits only. I think Iter represents that. And, Ibogaine's decriminalized in Oakland. It's decriminalized in parts of Washington. What?
Denver,
but not for commercial use. So right. Here's the challenge. We got a call from the city government of New York very recently. Could you come do Ibogaine treatments for free, non-commercial? And of course we were interested, but it's not a drive-through. So it's not like a safe injection site. You have to qualify somebody. They have to stay for a while. They have to stay for a little while after the treatment, even if they do qualify. So the infrastructure required, it takes a little bit longer, less than, state-run conventional drug and alcohol rehabilitation centers that take 30, 60, 90 days and cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. But we're not there yet. So non-commercial use is decriminalized in certain jurisdictions. But from an entrepreneurial perspective, we'd love to give the protocols to someone to do it, but we're not prepared to do those cases at this time.
Yeah, there's a lot of risk out there, but yeah, I don't want to make this too much about decriminalization, but there is an interesting, fundamental question that as long as you're not commercializing it, if someone is bringing in their own Ibogaine or psilocybin or whatever, and you just have a facility, so it's not, you're not commercializing Ibogaine in any sort of way, it's just possession and use. All you're doing is providing the facility and the support, whether or not that would actually be considered commercializing Ibogaine. But I would say that
and there's no question it would be cost prohibitive. No question. You'd have to have the best people working for free. And sometimes that happens, but not often.
Yeah, it's a tough. So I want to make sure we got time for our questions. I have a whole set of questions I haven't gotten to. I'm going to ask one more question before we get into the questions from the audience, and then we'll wrap it up. So my next question, just to go to we're talking about city and state regulations, and I wanted to talk about another potential future threat and understand how you see this world developing. But Oregon just recently passed Measure 109 and are going to start licensing service centers come January 2023. So there's no qualifying condition required. You don't have to be a resident of Oregon. So my theory is I believe this will bring in quite a bit of tourists into the state of Oregon who are interested in experiencing psilocybin. It's not legal to commercialize Ibogaine, so you're certainly not competing with them from an Ibogaine psilocybin perspective. But I would imagine that there's a good amount of people that are maybe a little bit reticent to travel outside the country for a psychedelic experience, and they may be more open to potentially have a psilocybin experience in Oregon rather than going to Mexico to have an Ibogaine experience. So I'm just curious if you see some of this different stuff happening at a state level as potentially being a threat to what you're doing outside of the United States, or if you think it's somehow synergistic and all tides rise together.
I think I think it depends. When you use the term threat, I assume what you mean is we're competing for clients, and the reality is, like I said before, severe chemical dependency, depression, anxiety, and trauma. All those people have gone somewhere, including oftentimes psychedelic assisted therapeutic environments. Maybe not like what you'll see in Oregon as you're describing, but they've tried. They had relief, but they didn't get recovery. They had relief, but they didn't have the healing. It wasn't satisfactory. Almost everyone who comes here, who in that population has considered or even tried other psychedelics and found that it was interesting. It was great. People use plants to heal for sure, but nothing works like Ibogaine, right? So we're not talking about a psychedelic experience. We're talking about healing, and healing with a substance that is effective, as I described it before, and non-addictive. So it's not ketamine. As well as I do, ketamine has a long history of abuse, and people do get addicted to it. No one has ever reported being addicted to Ibogaine. We've treated people here for ketamine addiction. So they're going to go to Oregon. They're going to have a great experience. We hope a safe experience. They're going to have empathy. They're going to have insights. They're going to have a sense of a familiarity with psychedelics. But if they're chemical dependent, if they're suffering from any of those other conditions that I described, eventually they'll either go back to Oregon or they may graduate to a willingness to go outside of the country for now. Look, Dustin, I think that we provide a service of education. Many of the people that reach out to us have questions that we want to answer. And recently someone contacted us about microdosing, and we said, listen, that's not what we do. Here's what it will do for you. Here's what you can expect. Here's why you can and cannot do that for the desired outcome, but we don't do it. So we absolutely want to have more people have a ultimately satisfactory experience with whatever plant medicine, ideally a plant medicine, works for them. And I think the tourists that go to Oregon will be great for the state. It'll be great for the conversation about individualized wellness and healing and a commitment to self-care. And that will contribute to awareness of psychedelics generally, and Ibogaine included.
Awesome. All right. Well, we are going to jump to the questions of the crowd. We're running low on time, so we're just going to run through these relatively quick. First question is from Jonathan Dido. It says, is Ibogaine only psychedelic research? I think what he's referring to there is the work that you guys are doing with Ibogaine. Is it for research purposes or is it actually for commercial purpose? I think we answered the question.
It's a great question. If you look at our website, we actually guarantee the result of the, if you follow the protocol, the result of the interruption of addiction or the relief from those conditions that I described. So we are gathering data. We are analyzing the data. We are using tools and surveys and questionnaires and apps and science on site here. But we're treating people and healing people today.
Yeah, and next question from Equilibrium Holistic. It's more a comment, but I think it's important. So one of the first things I hear whenever Ibogaine comes up, within 5 minutes, I always hear something like this regarding safety. I know we talked a lot about safety and what you guys are doing for safety, but maybe you could just say some quick comments. There's a lot of people that there's a lot of verbiage out there about Ibogaine not being safe. And so why don't you just address this question real quick?
In a clinical setting with trained, experienced professionals using the right technology and the ability to pre-screen, they know what they're looking for. They know how to analyze the data. Ibogaine is safe for sure. Any of those variables are absent, I wouldn't be as confident. Any two of those variables are absent, don't do it at all. Absolutely not. But you know what? High doses of a lot of chemicals can cause significant adverse events. Um, and I'm not saying that it's either more safe or less safe than any other chemical compound. But if you know what you're doing, you're using the right tools, you have the experience, you have the training, and most importantly, you know what to look for the right intervention. All of those adverse events can reliably be treated during an Ibogaine assisted therapeutic treatment.
Got it. Well, we are right on the hour. So congratulations, Tom. You made it through the investor hot seat. Did a great job. We appreciate having you. For all the viewers, we do these every other Thursday. So the next one is in 2 Thursdays, and it's going to be a good one. So make sure you tune in. Thank you all for attending. And Tom, thank you so much for joining us.
It's such a pleasure to see you and to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. Have a good one, everyone.